Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the fourth and final in a series of panel discussions organized by the Sioux Falls efforts to highlight various industries and talk about their experiences and their needs here going forward as the community attempts to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. I want to thank those of you who have joined us all the way along. We've been so pleased with the viewership. Terrific panels, great insight. We've got another one for you coming up today. The focus is going to be on technology and information services. So lots to dig into there. And again, a really, really great lineup of panelists. So if you are watching through Zoom, if you have registered for this, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you're going to be receiving a survey from Zoom after this is over, asking for your feedback. You're going to have the chance to weigh in on the same questions that we're asking our panelists. So if things come to mind, maybe jot those down. We do want to hear from you. You'll also be able to view this in replay on YouTube over on the Sioux Falls Development Foundation's YouTube channel, and we'll push it out through siouxfalls.business later on today through social media as well. So with that, I am going to get right to the panel, a really diverse group today. So you're going to hear a lot of different perspectives, which I think should be super interesting. And I'm going to begin with Matt Paulson. Matt is the founder of MarketBeat. I'll let him tell a little more about his company. He came into COVID during an interesting time. One, they were in the process of contemplating and then moving forward with really their first ever physical office for their entire team. So he got caught in the shift to work from home going back. And second, his company is in the thick of all of the market turmoil as a media source and information source related to the market. So Matt, thanks for joining us. What have the last few months been like for you and for MarketBeat? Obviously, as I said, a lot going on in your world.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a wild ride. So for those that aren't familiar, MarketBeat is what we call a financial media company, and that basically means we run a website and a newsletter that publishes information about the stock market, and we make tools that allow people to keep track of their investments. So when March kind of came around, we were just signed a lease in our office that I'm in now. So that kind of was interesting, but we had, it was on March 12th when I think the world really went crazy. And a lot of our advertisers just said, hey, we need to press the pause button right now. We don't know what's going on. We need time to figure this out. So we saw a big dip in advertising demand for about a month. Towards the end of April, it started to pick up again, and now it's kind of back where it was pre-COVID, so that's been good. The other thing with the volatility in the stock market, that's been really good for us in terms of eyeballs. Pre-COVID, we were doing, last year we averaged about 5 million page views a month. For the last 3 months, we've been up to 15 million page views a month, so that's created some, growing pains, if anything. We are going to have to hire somebody pretty soon to respond to all the emails we get. And we've had to upgrade our infrastructure and just deal with some of those challenges. But it's certainly been a mixed bag, but overall probably maybe a net positive for us just in terms of the people on our website. I kind of feel like we're at a caffeine high right now with just a lot of excitement and activity, and I think that will settle down. Actually, I think it's starting to settle down now with people taking vacations and maybe not less, a little bit less, panicked about the pandemic and, having better facts about it. So I think we will, probably float down from the high that we're at now, but I think it has maybe helped us get to a new plateau, and hopefully that'll be good for us over the long term.
Yep, we've seen, well, not quite your numbers over at Sioux Falls Business, but similar trajectory. Obviously, a lot of interest in online news, and now just a little bit of softening, but great to hear that you're able to grow your audience that much. I mentioned you're now in the physical office space. Anything that you have done organizationally through MarketBeat that you think other businesses might be able to learn from?
Yeah, we've always been kind of a partially remote team, and the biggest change we made just operationally in the last 3 months was, we knew that we weren't going to see each other for a while. So communication was going to be especially important times. For the first time, really set up a weekly call with our staff and said, okay, we are going to update each other on Zoom every Wednesday at 10:30, no matter what, and just make sure we see each other's faces, see what's going on, help each other with any problems that are going on. And we've also, one thing we've done for a while that's been really helpful is, so we have a company Slack channel, and every morning people have to post what they're going to work on that day in that Slack channel, and then also post what they got done yesterday as kind of a means of accountability and just a way to keep people up to date with what's going on. And we've done that for years, but it's become even more helpful during COVID.
That's interesting. Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on now and introduce to you Mike Grigsby, who I'm excited to virtually meet here for the first time. Mike is the Director of Innovation and Technology for the City of Sioux Falls. First of all, welcome to our city. Welcome to our city government. Mike, quite a time to be taking on any new job, especially yours. We've heard a lot from various city departments over the course of the pandemic, primarily, of course, the health department. So I'm excited to learn a little more about what your department has been working on, maybe largely behind the scenes, and what the last few months have been like for you. Feel free to tell us a little more about yourself as well. Again, welcome.
Jody, I appreciate it. And it has been an interesting time coming into not only a new job, but a new city. And when I got here, the entire floor for my department was empty except for me. So my team had been distributed and working remotely for several months before I had gotten here. So it's been interesting coming in. The challenge also coming in a new city has been, COVID has prevented me from making kind of face-to-face meetings and introductions with a lot of key players across the city, not just within the city staff, but definitely within community partners and other stakeholders. So, I know as we come out and kind of get eased restrictions, I know I'm picking up those opportunities to do that. Grateful for things like Zoom or WebEx and just the ability to have these virtual meetings. You asked some of what my department is doing. Inside of innovation and technology, I oversee marketing and communications, GIS or geographical information systems, and information technology, which also includes the Office of Innovation and digital services. So my department encompasses a lot, oversees a lot for what's going on inside the city organization, as well as having outside interaction with a lot of community stakeholders. Some of you, being in the city before may understand that projects like the transit pilot, which got a lot of profile last year and heading into this year, my office is working through those types of innovation projects. And it's an opportunity to stretch not only what we think technology can do, but also processes. I started to, as you were asking Matt the question, I was thinking through what may be some of the areas that have gotten kind of a hyper focus, and one of them is policy. As we hit COVID, we really started thinking about what our policies and what our processes that needed to be looked at creatively, looked at innovatively, and what are the things, what are the areas where we could gain additional efficiencies, additional effectiveness, and even saving on some economical challenges or economic addresses that we have done. So the department itself has been really responsive to COVID, to the challenges that it's put. But I would also say that coming into the city, I've watched the city be very responsive and resilient to the impacts of COVID. So I'm enjoying getting to know the city as a citizen. My wife is this is her hometown. She's a Sioux Falls native. So I'm very familiar with the city. I've been visiting it over the last 17, 18 years, and it's now a lot more fun getting to be a citizen of Sioux Falls.
Excellent. Well, we're glad to have your perspective. Look forward to hearing more of it here throughout the call today. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
One of the last stories I did pre-COVID was a really fun one, and it was checking in with several founders, CEOs of tech companies who had subsequently left their companies, and it was kind of a where are they now? And as part of that, Michael Zuercher was one of these former CEOs that I interviewed. His company continues to operate here in Sioux Falls in the public safety software space, but Michael had gone on and was in the process of developing a new company. It's called Prismatic. I'll let him tell you more about it. And I'm curious what a pandemic has been like for a brand new startup, which is essentially what this is. So welcome, Michael. Good to see you again, and look forward to catching up on how the last few months have gone for you and for your startup.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So, it's an interesting time to be a pre-revenue startup, I suppose. If there's any time for in-person contact to be challenging, pre-customer is maybe not the best time. We are a startup that is building a platform to make it easier for business-to-business software companies to connect their software with other software in their vertical market. So for example, if you're I always use the example, if you're a storage unit software management company, which is a real thing, if you can believe that, there's a whole industry around it. You need your software to connect to the gate so that, if you're a subscriber or if you have a storage unit at the place, your gate code works. And if your payment lapses, the gate stops working. And so we're a platform that makes it easier for those two software companies, the gate software company and the management software company, to connect to each other. And we're almost a year old now. We've been building this platform. And we were just getting to the point kind of this spring where we have a prototype and we were starting to talk to potential customers. In one way, I think the COVID pandemic has been a bit awkward because we have customers and understanding needs and things. At the same time, however, we're a small team. Kind of as Matt said, it was fairly straightforward to go remote for a software company. Everybody's just kind of self-contained as it is, and so we all went remote, started working from home. Did that for a couple months, and just did everything we could via Zoom to reach customers. And it's gone well. I think it's been less impactful than I guess I was afraid it was going to be. And what we're seeing now is that prospective customers are starting now to invite us back into their offices. Of course, different organizations have different protocols, and it's interesting to watch that kind of happen nationwide, I guess. But at least in the Midwest here, at least in South Dakota, it certainly seems like people are starting to have folks back in and take your temperature on the way in the door, but have you back in, and it's going well.
All right, good to hear. Anything that you and your team have done that might be good to pass along to other businesses?
I think it's kind of easy to talk about when there's only 7 of you. I think, it's at that scale, it's pretty easy to do a lot of things. But as Matt said, we did everything we could to really double down on communication, with Slack and Zoom and whatever else. I think, the other thing that, again, admittedly is easier at a smaller scale, but the other thing we did is just invest as much as we could in helping people feel as productive or as well set up as possible at home. And so, if you need a nice chair, buy a nice chair. If you need, all the monitors in the world, buy all the monitors in the world. Those costs from our perspective are so minuscule compared to, the opportunity cost of being unproductive, that, we just kind of immediately doubled down on that. And again, that's going to be a little different in different organizations. But, if you can do that, I think it's both just very practical and also well received by employees.
Yeah, can't go wrong with that advice. Okay, thanks, Michael. Of course, we'll come back to you. I'm now going to bring in Natalie Eisenberg. Natalie is the CEO of ClickRain, and it's always tempting for me to introduce ClickRain as a marketing firm, a digital marketing firm. But the topic of this call is information services and technology, and frankly, that's where ClickRain increasingly fits. ClickRain is a very technology-oriented company. So, Natalie, I'm excited to hear about what the team has been working on. Very interesting 3 months for those who support businesses with their communication and their marketing needs. I can say that firsthand. So catch me up. What have things been like for you and your team? What have some of the highs and the lows been?
Absolutely. So we are, by definition, a people-first digital agency. So we will own marketing agency. We work more with technology than some. But the people-first component has really come into play here over the last several months. Nationally, we're seeing major layoffs in the agency industry, and at least in our company, we've been fairly insulated. We've got about 40 people on the team, and we've been able to retain the team and take care of the team through this process. Client-wise, one part of our business is really a contracted retainer relationship piece, and we, over the months of April and May primarily, saw a lot of those partnerships pull back and some of the planned spends be paused for a period of time. But fortunately, a lot of those businesses are able now to restart those campaigns and media spends and things like that. A lot of businesses that we work with were hit really drastically with the effects of COVID-19. In a negative way, and others were actually hit in a positive way. Their businesses thrived through this period of time. So don't want to discount those either. And I think the people part of this equation for us has really just been the amount that we're living in a very heavy time. You know, the initial shock, the confusion, the anxiety that comes with everything happening over the last several months is a real thing. And so what we've done there is also double down on internal communication. Really tried to increase transparency with our team, really tried to turn up the dial on touch points, you know, personal touch points with individuals, and the same with clients. You know, they're dealing with a lot of ups and downs, and so the human touch has really come more into play than ever for us.
Did you shift most people to work remote? Did you keep them in the office? And then how did you become, I guess, even more intentional if you really work face-to-face in maintaining that communication?
Yeah, we were, for about 10 weeks, we were fully remote, and then began re-entering the office. We're almost all back in the office now. And during that time, we really relied on Zoom, Slack, but found that, you know, what used to simply be conference calls or just Slack interactions, written interactions, we relied much more heavily on video. And, you know, everybody now has much more of a comfort level working via video. And so it's something that we'll definitely retain moving forward.
Okay, great. And finally, I'm excited to welcome Dr. JoseMarie Griffiths, President of Dakota State University. Very eager to get that higher education perspective that's new for our series of panel discussions. And so Dr. Griffiths, though, will wear multiple hats, I think, for us today, both speaking on behalf of our organization as a whole, and then the role that it plays, of course, for our broader region in terms of economic and workforce development opportunities. So Dr. Griffiths, why don't you first of all talk me through as an organization how Dakota State University is doing, what the last few months have been like for you, the highs and the lows, and what's worked for you that you'd like to share with others.
Hey, thanks, Jody. Well, I'm pleased to be part of this panel. Have a slightly different perspective in some respects. We took action when our students were on spring break. So the first week of March, they were on spring break. And the first thing we did was say, hang on, stay on spring break for an extra week. And during that time, all of our faculty moved their courses online for remote access. We normally have about 40% of our courses online at any one time. And all about 100% of our employees moved to remote online work. And that all happened with a lot of pre-planning and preparation. And it actually went very smoothly. I am sort of really pleased at the way that worked. We had one faculty member who said it wasn't a smooth process, but everyone else was pretty happy with it. So we finished off the semester remote online, and now we're looking at how do we come back for the fall. We have been concerned, as all academic institutions have, of what this means for fall enrollments. But I think the early predictions of 15 to 20% drops in enrollment are not actually going to come to fruition. We may see something in the single-digit drops or single-digit increases. It's looking not bad at the moment. The most important thing we did, just as everyone else has talked about, you know, the move to the technology environment was easy because everybody works with technology anyway all the time. They just picked up their laptops and went home. But we spent a lot of time and deliberate effort on the social interaction, you know, trying to reinforce community among our people as they were working remotely for the first time, really. And I think that was very, very important. And we engaged in a number of formal activities as well as informal and fun activities for our staff. So we have a theme of the week. People can post pictures, they can dress up in different colors and different themes. We have virtual lunches and virtual happy hours, a whole variety of different things, karaoke, remote karaoke, just things to get people to feel connected and to feel that they're not abandoned out in the community.
Virtual karaoke. I've not heard that one before, so very, very clever. Okay. There's a lot more to talk about, obviously, from a community perspective. We'll do that here as the panel goes along, but thanks, Dr. Griffiths. Okay, I'm going to return to Matt now. We like to be forward-looking in these panels, so we want to talk about, this is can we do to continually help spark not just your business, but the community as a whole? Matt, are there some things that the business community can do to support MarketBeat going forward, or maybe more broadly, things that you think we could do to position Sioux Falls as the type of place where your workforce wants to come, wants to stay?
Yeah, for our business personally, we're kind of the gray duck in Sioux Falls, given, we are really the only company that does, SaaS around, or software as a service around the stock market. So it's hard for me to say there's something specific that other people in Sioux Falls can do. Honestly, we're okay, we'll be fine. In terms of the city, I think there's, it can be a real opportunity for remote workers that have jobs elsewhere to live in Sioux Falls. I did a panel for the chamber in February, I think, about remote work. So kind of a little bit ahead of the time, but one thing I said back then was, there's going to be a real opportunity for somebody to work for a company in California that lives in South Dakota. So you're, have a lower cost of living, but you can still command a high salary. And I think we're going to see that now more than ever. You've got big tech companies telling their employees, like Twitter, for example, saying you can work from home for good as long as you want to. So I think it's only a matter of time before hiring from those companies expands, saying, okay, we are fine having remote workers in South Dakota and North Dakota and Minnesota and Iowa, in the Midwest. So for people in small towns, I think that's a huge opportunity. If my wife, grew up in Emory, South Dakota, 300 people live there. You have, say, 10 people that get six-figure jobs that are paid remotely. That can change a town in a very, very positive way. So I think this is a good opportunity for our part of the country to have money flowing in that from jobs that otherwise wouldn't be previously available.
When you look at your workforce, maybe current, maybe projected, people that you might hire, what kinds of things are they looking for from a community? What are you hearing, and how might we be able to position ourselves to attract those kinds of workers?
Yeah, honestly, I think a lot of it's going to be, the high skill stuff in terms of tech, because those people have been hard to find, even locally to begin with. But as Dr. Griffiths keeps pumping out computer science and related majors, like those people are going to be valuable commodities, and a lot of those people unfortunately end up going to the East Coast to work for the government or other parts of the country for big tech companies. And there's going to be an opportunity now where they can still work for those places but live here in Sioux Falls or in Madison or whatever hometown they grew up in. But I mean, it's not going to stop at tech. I think if we have, like, our editorial manager lives in Florida. It just happened to be a relationship, and he doesn't need to be here. So I think if companies can figure out a way to kind of identify candidates and build relationships from at a distance, it could certainly expand, to many other industries.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, thanks. I'm going to go back to Mike Grigsby at the City of Sioux Falls. And, when we talk about how business can support your organization, I feel like there are a lot of partnership opportunities, particularly within the innovation space, Mike, in your department. Are there ways that you are seeing here as we emerge, hopefully, from the pandemic, that business can help support some of the greater goals of your department?
I'd actually like to kind of flip that around, is how can the city support what the businesses are doing? When you think about what's the best scenario for the government role, I would say, is to get out of the way and let the market and let businesses do what they do best, and that's find and attract more business. So I think one of the things that really we're trying to do right now, I know internally among my peers, but also within my office, is to look and kind of put a critical eye on processes. What are the ways that we can make it smoother and make it easier, less clunky to work and interact with government? I know I think about, like, the housing and all the permitting that has to go forth and all the inspections that have to go forth. We've done things like implement virtual inspections and really helped improve the communication channels between the government and the workforce out there and the businesses that are out there. I think the more that we can kind of create more innovative opportunities in those areas, I think that's where we can really become facilitators of business growth. I mean, the business community is out there because that's what they're trying to do, is to create more economic impact in the city. And I think we can be great partners and facilitators of helping them do that by just making things simpler, expediting processes, and making them more efficient.
Mm-hmm. As you look internally, I mean, it's a robust department within city government, and I don't know if you're able to add more people, but still you're hiring in that IT space. You're looking for innovation workers, which I feel like is sort of an evolving skill set. You know, are those people out there, and are there things you think we can do as a community to be attracting more of them?
They are, and I think, and I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse, but I think the kind of the impacts that COVID has had on what our work environment looks like, I think we can add some additional flexibility that you wouldn't naturally attribute to a government workspace. And I think that is very appealing to people that may be looking for, maybe even attractive to people coming from the coast, West Coast or East Coast, or some of the larger cities that are looking for a more calm experience. I mean, the way that Sioux Falls has handled the COVID response, I think has become a bright spot for the nation. Paying attention to what we've done, how we've handled it, and kind of what our posture and mindset is going forward. I think that becomes very appealing to the workforce. I mean, Sioux Falls has for years been in the top 10, if not the top 3, with regard to best places to live or best places for young entrepreneurs or young professionals. I would love to see a vibrant startup community really start in here and see what that can do to help generate and really stimulate the economy here.
Well, that's a great transition to Michael, who's done probably more than his share to cultivate the startup community for us. So, Michael, if you're just joining us, is a tech company founder. His latest venture is called Prismatic, and very much in the startup mode still. So I don't know, Michael, is there anything directly we as a business community can do? Obviously you need customers. I don't know if those customers exist in the Sioux Falls business community or not, but what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll echo what Matt said, that, you know, we're a little bit of we're very much in a niche, right? We're providing a platform for B2B software companies. So, you know, it's not like the Sioux Falls business community is probably able to do a lot to stimulate our customer base, and we'll be fine. We'll keep moving forward. I think, however, if you look more, a little bit more broadly, and I completely agree with what Matt talked about regarding the general shift toward remote with big tech companies and how that could affect our part of the country. I think if you if I focus a little bit more just on Sioux Falls, I think one of the things Sioux Falls did very well, as Mike said, was have a measured response, or a kind of predictable response throughout the entire pandemic. And I think what that did is it allowed people to, at least as much as you can in this kind of event, stay focused on what you need to stay focused on. I think one of the biggest impacts of this whole situation, I think for a lot of us, has been just distraction. Especially early on when nobody knew where this was going or how fast it was going or whatever. I think, one of the biggest early impacts wasn't just that we started working remotely, it's that we were all distracted with a million things. And I think, there's only so much anybody can do about that, of course, but I think Sioux Falls did a really good job of communicating a lot, and communicating, as I said, kind of in a predictable way, I guess is the best thing I know how to say it. And I think that had a big impact on letting people, at least as much as possible, keep doing what they needed to do, both from a personal perspective, from a work perspective. And I think the more we keep in mind that helps all of us, but certainly the business community. The more we can keep people, just going about their day with whatever changes are necessary, the better it is for everybody. And so, I don't know that I'm really saying that we need to change anything there. I'm pointing out that I think it went really well, but I think it's noting that really well. And if we talk about a second wave or what happens over, this fall or whatever, I think keeping in mind that, at least from my perspective, that was super beneficial from a business perspective. And it's worth trying to repeat, I think.
Right. Great point. And we have seen very solid feedback that reinforces exactly that. So good thoughts. I'm going to bring in Natalie now, and I might have you wear a couple hats for this one. Let's talk first of all about ClickGrain specifically, and what the business community might be able to do to support, not maybe even just your agency, but the marketing industry in general. And then I'm going to shift to Spark Sioux Falls and talk a little bit about that, because I know you've been involved in that too. So what are some initial thoughts on how the business community might be able to support you?
Well, I too would say that our company is in a healthy place, and short of giving us a call if you have a marketing need, we're all right. We're seeing a lot of organizations maybe find themselves in a place of not sure which way to turn in terms of their marketing, and we can certainly help bring clarity to that and offer some efficient solutions if that's the case. In our company, I guess, just kind of dovetailing off of what others have said, in our company, I've really noticed operationally, just as we're getting people back in the office, just a spectrum of people's mindsets and people's comfort level with various practices and just being about the world again. And, even just in our little 40-person company, we've had to kind of measure find our middle ground in that, and set up a place of work that is accommodating to someone who may not necessarily feel comfortable being in close proximity to others, may prefer to remain remote, maybe at risk health-wise, maybe just has anxiety about it all. So really just kind of working through all the variety of mindsets within our company and also in our community, which kind of leads to the Spark thing, I think, Jody.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, there has been pervasive anxiety, I would say, throughout this, and we've seen that even in the research that we've been doing. So good thoughts there. Yes, I know you have been involved in the Spark Sioux Falls communication side of things, which we're starting to see roll out this week. Do you have some thoughts for the business community? Maybe they're seeing some of this Spark Sioux Falls messaging out there. How would your team like to see the business community get further involved in this effort?
Absolutely. So we launched a campaign, the marketing division of Spark launched a campaign this week. And the message is, be safe, be smart, get out there, Sioux Falls. And when you are ready, Sioux Falls is ready for you, is really the message. And really wanting to recognize that a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, small businesses have had a major hit the last month and have now adapted in a big way to welcome customers again in a different way, in a safer way, maybe offering new things. Curbside pickup is something that seems to be sticking with a lot of businesses. But when you're ready, Sioux Falls is ready for you. And for those of us who have a chance to interact with others in our daily work, I think we can maybe champion that message a little bit more and just encourage that being out and about in a new way, in a safe way, is an okay thing, and something that we can all move forward with when we're ready.
Yeah. Okay, great. And I'll go back to Dr. Griffiths now, and Dr. Griffiths, maybe you also want to take a little more of a different slant on this one when we talk about how the community can help support your organization. Perhaps it is a little bit of both, how you see DSU being able to help fulfill the needs of the broader community here going forward. But when I think of DSU, that is what comes to mind, pandemic or not. All of the work that you're doing, both in education and in research, that is going to potentially translate to the broader business community. But what are your thoughts, I guess, on those opportunities coming out of COVID-19? Are they the same as before? Are there new opportunities?
I actually think, well, first of all, we're sort of, one of the things we had to do as we moved into the pandemic was try to remember that we do have to focus on our strategic trajectory. So we've been looking at growth, and in that sense, we hope to provide more graduates out into the community, into Sioux Falls, in the areas where we have strength. And we've been expanding the areas in which we develop programs. So we've got actually proposals now at the Board of Regents in artificial intelligence. And we anticipate having a minor followed by a major very quickly. We've been hiring faculty over the last several years, so this is an important development for us. And I think that the job opportunities are going to be significant. And I think, as Matt said, that more and more of our graduates want to stay in the area. And I think increasingly both the federal government as well as the tech companies are recognizing they can't expect everyone to go to them. The world has changed. So now I think we have opportunities to bring them or to have them employ our graduates from South Dakota, from the region in the area. But in terms of what the industry could do for us or businesses could do for us, there are a couple of areas. Internships is always really great for our students to have internships in the summer or even during the year. So that's a good opportunity. Our students are really focused and tend to be very applied in what they do. We're also working with several high schools on dual credit programs, and we'll be looking for mentors who can come and talk to the high schoolers about career opportunities and educational opportunities, not just at DSU, but more generally. And then I think we haven't really done this before, but I think maybe we should talk about the potential of helping us recruit faculty. It's very difficult for us to recruit faculty for main reason, there aren't that many qualified faculty in the areas in which we want to get them, but perhaps not only talking about what we have at DSU in Madison, if we could sort of expose them to life in and around Sioux Falls, we might actually be more able together to bring in the qualified faculty that we're going to need. And then you mentioned R&D, and I'm glad you did. That's something that has been stalled in a way because of the pandemic. Federal government has sort of ceased its activities to a large extent with grants and contracts. But partnerships for research and development. We have a number of partnerships with businesses in Madison and businesses in Sioux Falls, but again, those opportunities for us to work together on issues or problems or concerns and develop solutions together is something that we definitely would like to see happen. To the extent that we could actually move towards the development of intellectual property and the exploitation, the collaborative exploitation of intellectual property for the development of new businesses in the area would be very advantageous for all of us.
You know, I am curious, Dr. Griffiths, I've toured Madison Cyber Labs or Mad Labs. You know, I've seen the work going on in there. You're well known, obviously, in the cybersecurity space. Do you feel like potentially, given this massive digital shift that's occurring, that coming out of the pandemic, things like cybersecurity, like artificial intelligence, like the Internet of Things, which you focused on in those labs, I mean, are those things going to come sooner than later, potentially? And is DSU positioned to take advantage of some of that?
That's a great question, Jody. I do believe they're going to happen faster than people imagined. Even the work going on in Washington, D.C., both in the executive and legislative branch, they've designated now 10 technological areas of strategic importance to the United States. And cybersecurity is there, artificial intelligence is there, and both of them rely heavily on data science. So I see that as a tremendous triangle. We have capabilities in those three areas. We want to build on them. I mean, if you think about it, we're going to need to use artificial intelligence for cybersecurity. We have to secure artificial intelligence applications. Both of them, you'll be dealing with a lot of data and data analytics. So I think we're going to see more and more rapid shifts in digital transformation of businesses and organizations generally. And if we look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics on occupational projections, the projections across all occupations is between 2018 and 2028, 5% increase. In cyber related, I talk generally that's all IT related, it's 12%. In cybersecurity, it's 32%. In software engineering, it's 31%. In computer science, it's 27%. They don't even have a category for AI. So I'm just saying this is going to happen much faster than people thought because the companies are going to demand it.
Yeah, okay, great thoughts, thank you. I'll go back to Matt now, who I think gave us a good framework for tackling this final question when he said earlier in the discussion that more than ever, you will be able to live where you want in all likelihood and work for someone else. So with that in mind, the community becomes even more important and the things that the community offers. So if we're talking about Sioux Falls or the Sioux Falls area now, Matt, what specific things do you think we should be investing in as a community to become that place of choice for workers going forward?
I think some of the lowest hanging fruit is people that may have grown up in Sioux Falls and moved elsewhere and thought maybe they'd move back at some point. Now is probably the perfect time to move back because we're a low population density state. We don't have a lot of COVID problems, and people, companies are going to let people work from wherever they want, to some extent. So I think that might be an area of focus for the city to attract some of those people back, and or people that have spouses that are from the state. It's going to be hard to get somebody that has no connection to South Dakota to move here, early on. So I think that's probably the easiest area of focus. But But beyond that, I think there's kind of two things that the state should probably do. I know that like the Governor's Office of Economic Development in South Dakota places, they focus on recruiting companies to South Dakota. Maybe it's now time to have an organization like them start to recruit people in South Dakota in terms of saying, okay, you're a remote worker, you have a job already, you want to live in South Dakota, we'll pay you a relocation bonus. I think Maine, it was Maine, has already done something like that, where if you can show that you have a job somewhere else, they'll pay for your moving and give you like 10 grand or something like that over a couple of years, knowing that you are going to create a lot of economic impact after that. So maybe there's an opportunity to do something like that. And the other thing is, I think our workforce training programs, maybe in collaboration with the Department of Labor or universities, we probably need to do a better job of showing people like how to be a remote employee and how to find those jobs. So in any part of the state where we do job training or job helping people find jobs, can we set up systems and processes that say, okay, here are all the jobs locally, but here are all the jobs that you could get other places that you can do here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting thoughts. Okay, great. Thanks very much, Matt. I'll go back to Mike Grigsby with the city. Mike has lived in a number of different locations. So I'm curious for your perspective, are there some takeaways here, Mike, as I know we're still assessing the Sioux Falls community, but are there some things that you notice that maybe we could be building upon or improving upon to make ourselves an even more desirable location?
I think that I think Sioux Falls has got a lot of good bones to build on, and an incredibly great culture to work with. Your question around what can the community do, or how important is community in this resurgence, and not only from COVID, but how does the city continue to grow? I mean, I think our census may put us right at 200,000, maybe even just over 200,000. And what's the rate of growth going to look like over the next 5, 7, 10, maybe even 20 years? And how do we accommodate what that growth is going to be? And not just growth. I mean, you have to think about where that growth is going to come from. So if Sioux Falls grows from people coming in from West Coast or East Coast, they're going to have a completely different mindset of what makes a successful city than people who grew up in the Midwest. And so how do the mingling of those two different ideas and concepts and terms or definitions of success, how do they mix inside of a city? I think about one of the things, and Jody, to your point, I am still getting to know the city a little bit. I live downtown. I'm very, very familiar with what happens down there, and the walkability of downtown and the coffee culture, what I'll call the coffee culture, really helps create interaction points where I can have touch points with different people and meeting and just naturally occurring spaces. I don't see that in other areas of town, even though the population lives in, it's spread out throughout the city. I think finding those districts or creating districts where you have create a coffee culture, and I'm using that in quotes, but the understanding of how do we get those touch points? Is it a craft brewery? Is it a coffee shop? Is it an art gallery? Is it a craft? I think I heard the term craftorium. Those are things. How do we create intentional and unintentional mixing points for people to do? And I think once you understand that, and once we create some of that, or even manufacture some of that, I think you begin to understand where the opportunities are and where you can lend some assistance. I think lifestyle opportunities is going to be I don't want to call it a market, but those are definitely going to be some areas where support can be definitely welcomed, and also there will be some opportunities for capitalistic ideas, if you will, for that. So I think there's great opportunity. Sioux Falls, like I said, especially with the park system, the trail system, being able to get around the entire city without the use of combustion engines or minimize the fossil footprint, I think that's tremendous. How do we capitalize on that? How do we create some offshoots that can build into different districts? So those are some of the things I see.
Great thoughts. No, thank you for that. Thanks for joining us. This has been great. Michael, how about you? You know, in your past life and hopefully now in your future life, you've had to bring in and keep a lot of workers here. So what are some things that stand out to you from a community standpoint as far as what they're looking for and maybe what Sioux Falls could continue to do to bring in even more people?
You know, I think we have all the pieces necessary, or at least we have many of the pieces necessary. And I mean, right down to some just infrastructure things. Our internet in this town per dollar is bizarrely fast compared to lots of parts of the country. You know, I mean, given the size of our community, we have good air travel. You know, I mean, you can kind of go down this list of a lot of things that I think to some extent we take for granted, but you know, I think we've got, as Mike said, a lot of the bones necessary. I think you know, there have always been a couple of challenges with recruiting people. One is the weather. I don't have a solution for that, and if somebody has a solution for that on this call, go do that. You know, instead of being on this call, but you know, I think other than the weather, the other big thing for recruiting, you know, getting kind of critical mass has been jobs. And, you know, I think we all agree that it's very likely nationwide that we're at least a little bit of a, you know, a turning point with, as everybody has been saying, you know, big tech companies, possibly the federal government, et cetera, being willing to have more remote workers. And so I guess from my perspective, we're kind of possibly looking at a turning point where we say, we've had the building blocks for a while. Now, one of the big challenges is possibly being relieved a bit. We should probably double down on, you know, trying to communicate to other parts of the country in whatever way makes sense in a targeted fashion that, you know, we've got these building blocks and we know that you've got some opportunity to move that you didn't before. And so I guess, you know, long story short, I'm not sure there's always more we can do, but I'm not sure there's any one thing that like needs to fall in place. I feel like we've spent the last, you know, couple of decades having a lot of those things fall in place. And now possibly we have this macro trend that's going to play to our benefit as long as we, you know, properly recognize it and exploit it. So I don't have all the answers for how to do that, but I don't want us to stay stuck on the problems. I think to some extent, we've solved so many of them that we've got a lot of the pieces that we need.
All right, terrific. Thanks so much. Look forward to following the progress of the new company and updating things along the way there. A good transition, I think, to go back to Natalie now to talk maybe about some of those targeted approaches that might make sense in terms of telling the story the community should be doing to position ourselves for success here going forward.
Well, I'm here nodding my head profusely as Michael's talking about the good things going that we have here. I think we definitely still have that humble attitude in a lot of ways where we have a hard time owning the successes and focus more on what more we need to do. So I think, you know, the more of us that can own a little swagger about where we are and walk with a little bit of a confidence about Sioux Falls and about this area in the region, that will help. I think the new community brand that we have for Sioux Falls will come into play here as we communicate out our story for Sioux Falls in particular. It's sharp, it's fresh, you know, it reflects, much more reflects the Sioux Falls of today as it should. You know, and then the story of where we're from, you know, I'm homegrown. And when you try and articulate what's so great about here, it's hard to explain. It's still hard to explain sometimes. So I think we have work to do on really locking that up and telling our story of what a wonderful and thriving, prosperous place this is to communities around the country, to businesses around the country. On the topic of talent, I would just agree with Matt on the need to interact more actively with our institutions. You know, I know internships are kind of the go-to in terms of our communication and overlaying with students. But I would be really open also to things that are a little more micro as far as a commitment. You know, I like to meet students. I like to interact with students. I like to have some input on curriculum, you know, the things that they're learning. We tend to be hiring more experienced team members because, you know, sometimes the students just don't have exactly what we need. And I'd love to get to a point where students have exactly what we need.
Yeah, great thoughts. Agreed. Okay, thanks very much again for joining us. Always good to check in with you. And I'll wrap up now with Dr. Griffiths. One of my favorite topics with Dr. Griffiths is being more forward-looking and looking at the opportunities for us in business that could result from the talent that she is cultivating at DSU. And even before COVID, there were a lot of them. There were a lot of companies out there that need people skilled in what DSU is teaching. Dr. Griffiths, what do you think as far as our ability in Sioux Falls to continue to attract some of those companies, and is there more we need to do as a community to position ourselves to do that?
Yes, I think I think we've done a lot of the things, but I think we need to carry the same message together. This is not just DSU saying we're doing things. This is not just Sioux Falls saying it. There are lots of elements. And as you had asked, basically the question of everyone else, I wrote down 4 points. So it's interesting because I think everybody's touched on them. The first one is we do have to overcome this classic Midwest humility. We do what we do and we're good at it, we're good people. But, New York doesn't do that, and Austin, Texas doesn't do that. We have to really push that out a little bit more. Maybe the marketers in Sioux Falls need to help us get out that message. I think another thing that is very, very good is the Young Professionals Network. And we are now connecting our students, bringing them into Sioux Falls, giving them more access to businesses on career days earlier in their exposure to careers. I also think the entrepreneurial mindset in Sioux Falls is a big attractor for young people. There's a sort of youthful spirit to Sioux Falls that I think captures people once they get there. It's almost like people who come to DSU capture the excitement with our new buildings and what's going on. We need to get people to experience Sioux Falls. So hopefully we can do more, perhaps by bringing conferences and other groups, bringing executives from tech companies in to experience Sioux Falls, because it's once you've experienced it, then you understand it. And then the last thing I put down was the technological infrastructure, which we need to keep sort of moving forward. Michael mentioned the internet infrastructure. We have a 100 gig network between all the institutions, academic institutions up and down I-29, which we can experiment with any business partner we happen to have. There's lots of opportunities for us to do things. The 5G network that's beginning to be implemented in Sioux Falls is another attractor. So, but the other thing is, I don't think it always all has to be in Sioux Falls. I do think we could engender sort of the development of the IT industry in small towns across South Dakota. So I tend to have a South Dakota vision. Sioux Falls obviously plays a key part in that, as I believe does Madison, but so do small communities all around the state have an opportunity now for workforce and economic development, just because we've learned that we can do things remotely. But young people in those small communities need to be connected to other people who have similar interests and are doing similar things. Because if we isolate them early on, it's going to be hard for them then to reconnect and re-engage. And I think we might lose some of them.
Yeah, great thoughts. Again, thanks so much for joining us and for your leadership around so many issues. I want to thank all of you for watching. I want to thank our panelists. This does bring us to a close. If you would like to watch and replay, head over to YouTube. This is the fourth, as I said, in our series of 4 panels. We have talked healthcare, we've talked financial services, we've talked agriculture, we've talked manufacturing. So if you missed any of these, just go to YouTube, look up the Sioux Falls Development Foundation, look up Spark Sioux Falls. And if you are watching this through Zoom, you are going to be receiving a survey, so watch for that as well. Panelists, again, thank you so much. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.